So we're going to go ahead and get going because it is 7 o'clock and it's top of the hour. My name is Jessianna Saville. I am a renal dietitian. I have been working in this polycystic kidney disease space, really engaged in it since 2020. And I'll share a little bit about the story there and how we kind of got involved with ketogenic diets and PKD in just a minute. But it's really great to be here, and I'm excited to share with all of you some information about PKD, hopefully give you kind of a framework and some thoughts about how you can use nutrition as a tool to be able to improve and sustain your kidney function and your overall health. So just a couple of things real quick. I can get distracted super easy if I follow the chat, so I do move it off of my screen while I'm presenting. If you have any questions or something that comes up, go ahead and drop it in the chat, and I will take those questions at the end and answer any of them. And I'm happy to answer questions, broad general questions for sure. If it's specific to you, that of course is best in an appointment. The only other thing is that on occasion this week at my house, I don't totally know why, Zoom has been pausing and then it's been kicking me out and then it lets me back in. So if you see me blip out, I will be right back. I don't know why it's doing it this week. Tech is really beating me. So I'm hoping it doesn't happen tonight, but if it does, just know that I will be right back. So let's go ahead and get going tonight. Kidney Nutrition Institute is a collaborative group of renal dietitians. We have dietitians in lots of different specialties in the PKD space. A couple people that work with our folks that have polycystic kidney disease include Kelly. Kelly is a really unique dietitian. She's been a renal dietitian for a long time, probably over 20 years. She has PKD herself. She has been through as a participant, as a patient. She has worked with us, and now she works with our patients. She does such a phenomenal job, and she understands the whole story, right? Because she has lived it. A really incredible clinician. She's our program coordinator at Renew, which I'm going to share with you and just share a little bit about that in just a minute. Jennifer is our Canadian dietitian that works with folks with PKD, and Amy is another one of our dietitians here in the States that works with PKD, and Kelly and Lindsay. They work in different capacities, autoimmune, diabetes, and Clarissa helps with all of our meal planning, all of our, logistical work on the background as well. So really incredible team, lots of people that I feel really privileged to work with. But I wanted to give you a few faces here to connect with. A couple things that we are real proud of here at Kidney Nutrition Institute. We do specialize just in the kidneys. We believe in taking a holistic approach, but really kidneys are where we spend our time and our research, and we love to know everything about them. We're really proud pioneers of using a plant-focused ketogenic approach for PKD and CKD. It's not the only nutrition approach we use, but it's definitely something that we're proud to have pioneered in this space. And it's a really core therapy for us, especially for PKD. We own and help create the Renew program. So that is run through Kidney Nutrition Institute. And we really value this food as medicine, a holistic, people, not disease-centered approach. So we're not here to treat PKD. We're here to treat a person and understand the whole person, not just one disease. And really, our mission is really kidney disease remission. Like, we think that there are solutions in lifestyle, and we really think that people can get good results and not have to feel like they're going to end up on dialysis no matter what, just because they have kidney disease or PKD. So a lot of people come to this class for different reasons. Maybe you're in a stage where you're kind of gathering information, you just got diagnosed, you're trying to figure out, what can I do? What's relevant? If you've been on Google and searched, you're going to feel pretty confused, like this poor lady in red here. Maybe you've heard all these different things when you've read online, right? Don't eat potassium, don't eat phosphorus, don't eat salt. There's questions about, like, should you have protein, animal protein, or don't worry about it, doesn't matter, oxalates. If you've been following the PKD conversation, there's a lot of conversation around ketogenic diets and, some forward-thinking advocates are saying, yeah, keto's the right way, and other physicians are saying, no, keto's not the right way. Lots of controversy there, which I hope I can clarify some thoughts. So there's not a one size fits all. There's questions about, should I be like totally plant-based, but don't eat beans and nuts? Should I have meat? Should I not have meat? Then you may have heard about low protein diets or OREC or PROL. And on top of that, maybe you're anemic, you're struggling with your thyroid or want to lose weight. And really, I feel like so many of the patients, when they come in and talk to us, they say, look, I have PKD and I want to do something. And all I've been told at this point is I can't really do anything. It's genetic, like just follow and we'll kind of treat your symptoms, keep your blood pressure low. There's nothing you can do. But I want to be proactive and do something. And I really think there's lots you can do. And it is not all of these. The internet is a really awful place with tons and tons of very inaccurate information, a lot of restrictions that are unnecessary and framed the wrong way. So I'm hoping I can give some clarity so you don't feel like maybe there's nothing to eat. The reality is that really the best nutrition plan depends on the person. We use a ketogenic approach, but I would not recommend that for every single person. It's not right for every single person. We use plant-based diets, but I would not recommend that for every single person, even though it's a great approach for some people. The best nutrition plan depends on the person because everyone is so different in how their body works, in the comorbidities, in their environment. There's just so many different factors that play into the best nutrition approach. There's not a one size fit all. There's a few core principles that you can definitely follow and some low hanging fruit to hit, but there's not a one size fits all. Okay, so what we're going to cover today is I want to share with you a little bit about why nutrition in the polycystic kidney disease space is changing, right? Why the recommendations from 1 year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, how really there's been a big shakeup in this arena as far as like what you can try and what you can do. I'm excited to share a little bit about that. I want to give you a few real practical, simple steps as far as like what you could do today, right? Things you don't have to have a dietitian to do. Of course, I am a dietitian. This is where I work, and there's a lot of value in what we do to help people. But there are some things you can do even without a dietitian, real simple things, and I want to go through that. And then I want to give you some of the options that are out there for getting some traction and getting really good efficacy and getting some good outcomes from your nutrition. Where can you go for help if you want assistance? And then, of course, some Q&A. So we're going to start with some science because I need you to understand a little bit of the background here before we dig in. So often with any type of kidney disease, autoimmune kidney disease, PKD, CKD with diabetes, people consider, oh, it's just the kidneys, so we need to do a kidney diet, right? We're going to do a renal diet because this person has kidney problems. That is absolutely the wrong way to think because what is driving the kidney problem is the most important thing. Not that the kidneys are hampered in and of themselves, even though that creates some considerations. It is really, you have to look at what is driving the kidney disease. And that's what we want to understand with polycystic kidney disease. Now, I wanted to put Dr. Wimes on here. He's been a really incredible partner with us for a long time. A little bit of background is in early 2020, right before COVID hit. It was the last business trip I took. I flew out to California and I was going to attend like a 1 or 2 day seminar from one of the nephrologists who was a close colleague. And while I was, after I booked my ticket, I saw this study drop into my feed about ketogenic diets for PKD. And I honestly was super skeptical. I thought, this is dangerous. This is going on fad diets, and I am just not so sure about what I'm seeing about ketogenic diets, all for kidney disease. Like, how could this work? I'm sorry, I brought my water today because I do talk fast, and I need water as I talk. So, however, I had a patient at that time who was real close with. I still work with her. I've worked with her for, I guess, going on 4 years now, longer than that, 4 or 5 years. And we weren't getting good outcomes. We tried a lot of really aggressive therapies. And so since I was going to California anyways, I reached out to Dr. Wimes and asked if I could come meet him and kind of pick his brains about his research. I had this patient who I just didn't feel like we were getting anywhere with. And, ketogenic diet, if I could do it safely, I really wanted to give it a shot. So that's where I met Dr. Wimes and was really impressed with how he was coming at the problem of PKD, and just heard a little bit about the studies, which I'll share today, that they had done at his labs, and wanted to see if we could make ketogenic nutrition therapy work. And that's kind of how we became involved with Dr. Wimes and his 30 plus years of research with PKD. He's got a long, long history researching PKD and bringing it into the science. So just going to give you a little bit of background. So Santa Barbara Nutrients, that is the company that Dr. Wimes founded. He said, I don't want my research to just end up dusty on a shelf. I really want it to do something. It's like so much of the area that I'm in, the research just ends up collecting dust, and I feel like this can make a big impact. So they've shared some of their slides with us. But so in PKD, they know that there's a couple things that happen that eventually cause the disease to manifest himself. So they call this the third hit kind of theory, which, first hit is you have this germline mutation. Second hit, you have maybe a random somatic mutation. And when both of these things happen, you're on your road to manifesting polycystic PKD. But there's a third hit. There's something else that happens that kind of triggers a lot of the disease process. And this is where Dr. Wimes' research really focused. And what came about was two interesting pathways. There's probably more. I feel like this is kind of the tip of the iceberg, but it's really enlightened us. So number one is they saw that there were these microcrystals in the kidney tubules that seemed to be causing cyst dilation. Now, these microcrystals were made with oxalates, phosphates, uric acid. These little tiny microcrystals are real sharp, and the body's response to make sure that they can pass through, get into the urine, and get out of the body is to dilate the tubules, which was what they were seeing in the animal models, is that this persistent dilation of the tubules was causing cyst growth. So one intervention, of course, is how can we reduce these crystals, these microcrystals manifesting? And I'll share with you a little bit about where that comes into the research in a second. The other thing, so I'm going to move this down a little bit, that Dr. Wimes' research really focused on was looking at beta-hydroxybutyrate ketones. So beta-hydroxybutyrate is naturally produced in our body when our body goes into ketosis. Ketosis is when our body is burning fat instead of glucose for fuel. And your body just has these two pathways where it can feed itself and keep it alive, right? Glucose, we eat, apples, raspberries, pasta, whatever, carbohydrates. Our body takes those carbohydrates, converts it into glucose, and that glucose and glycogen is used all throughout our body for energy. The other source, amazing that we have this as humans, so we don't just die in starvation, is that our body can convert into using these ketone bodies instead of glucose as a fuel source. So that's really comes from fat. So in a starvation mode, for example, if you didn't have any food for a while, instead of your body not having glucose, because your body really can't store a lot of glucose, but our bodies store fat very effectively, much to the chagrin of many of us. But your body converts to using our fat stores through this process. What Dr. Wimes' lab saw is that in the PKD, they had both rats and felines, cats, is that when the animals either were in ketosis or even when they were giving, an exogenous ketone, this BHB, they saw that the kidneys actually shrunk, right? The cysts actually shrunk. And that was a really, really important discovery, because what we discovered, and this is kind of true for cancer and a lot of other cystic diseases, is that these cells, these cystic cells, were growing off of glucose. They were feeding on glucose. They were using that as their energy source to continue to produce and get larger and larger. But they couldn't do that in the presence of ketones. So when there was a lot of ketones in the body, the cysts would shrink. So a couple things, like I said, this is our typical food source, but ketones seem to do something quite different in PKD. Again, I think this is probably one of the most significant discoveries for polycystic kidney disease in the last 50 years or more, maybe even more than tolvaptan and GnRQ, because it really starts helping us understand what's going on with this disease, that third hit mechanism. And instead of us thinking, oh, it's genetic, you got it, there's nothing you can do, we actually have an action item that can modify the disease process. The other piece we get a lot of questions about is this ketocitra. So if you have in your diet, you can use a ketogenic diet, you get this BHB and it delivers these ketone bodies. Another part of the research was they just gave a regular diet with a BHB and they saw that the cyst shrunk also. That's the research that Dr. Wimes took, and they developed a medical food, ketocitra. We'll talk a little bit about this later on, but we get lots of questions I'd like to address early on. Ketocitra, which helps with modifying those microcrystals that we talked about, that first part that can influence disease progression. It has a really basic formula, basic meaning on a pH level, and it has a lot of citrate in it, and both of those can modify the crystallization of the oxalates and uric acid, et cetera. And it also delivers some exogenous BHB. So this was launched through Santa Barbara Nutrients. It's one of the things that can be used with polycystic kidney disease. We use it in one of our programs as part of a synergistic approach. But those are kind of some background of some things that are on the market. Okay, so let's talk about nutrition. So the science is we're going from, can we modify this third hit mechanism? What are a couple of things we're seeing in the research? We're seeing BHB, ketogenic diets. We're seeing modification of oxalates. Already before Dr. Wimes, there's some research on water and fluid and how do you really trigger certain pathways with getting enough hydration. So it's another big component as well. But let's talk about what you can do on the nutrition side. Like, what are all the pieces that play into this? All right. So if you go look on the internet, again, I know it's a busy slide. There's a lot of different conversations about what's good or bad for kidney disease, what's good or bad for PKD. Here's a couple of things that I want to clarify before we get in what you need to do. Most of the conversations around just kidney disease in general, not even just PKD, but kidney disease in general, they'll have a lot of conversation about potassium and phosphorus. So much, right? Don't eat tomatoes, don't eat oranges, don't eat potatoes, don't eat beans, don't eat nuts. If you have kidney disease, don't eat all these foods. If you have seen research about like follow a low potassium diet, follow a low phosphorus diet, if you have kidney disease, it's a little bit misleading because neither one of these, a super low potassium or a super low phosphate diet, is going to actually help preserve your kidney functions. Phosphorus, a little bit more, but these are really nutrients that you watch when you're on dialysis or when you have very little kidney function. If you are earlier stage kidney disease, these are almost irrelevant for you. And yet this is where all of the information tends to focus. Instead, if you look at what are some things that can actually help you preserve kidney function, we're looking at sodium, right? How does sodium play into it? Too little or too much? Either way, we have a lot of patients that are drinking tons of fluid with PKD, and they're actually eating way too little salt. They're having cramps, they're feeling sluggish, and no one has guided them on how much salt to eat. They've just been told, eat a low sodium diet. No is not the same as low. And then they're drinking tons of fluid because they're on tolvaptan or GnRQ or just because they were told to, and they're not balancing it. So this is a really, really important nutrient on both the low and the high side. Too much can also really impact progression. Gut health is a big a big part of PKD. This is something that all of our patients, we assess for if there's any opportunities to improve gut health. It's a whole module, a whole week that we do in our group program Renew, where we talk about gut health and what you can do to improve it. I really think this is a big driver of PKD. Protein, the amount and the type really depends on your stage of kidney disease. There is not a one size fit all. There's some people that have, GFRs of 50, 60, 70, 80, normal kidney function with PKD. They have a lot more flexibility with their protein than somebody whose GFR is 6 or 10. At least that is how we practice right now. So getting clarity on that's really important. Addressing inflammation is a big deal. Getting the right micronutrients in, right? What vitamins and minerals do you need? Enough hydration, really being able to understand fasting, right? How does fasting fit in? I think fasting is a really incredible tool to help produce some of those ketone bodies that we talked about. Oxalates to help with the microcrystals is a big, big area. And then, of course, ketogenic therapy. These are all things, if you look in the research, are things that can link back to being able to preserve kidney function. And it's something that we utilize with our patients. Okay, so big picture. Now I'm going to take it down into some more practical things you can do. These are all the things. Isn't that awesome? It's not like, oh, you have a genetic disease. Too bad. All of these things, when you understand them, can make a difference in preserving your function, maybe even improving your function. All of these things play into it. So it's a really, really important piece. Okay, we have 7 things that we think are really critical. There's, of course, more things you can do, but these are real simple things. Simplify sodium, fill up on fluid, manage, but don't obsess over oxalates. Oxalates are really hard to obsess over because they're like always changing. They're quite lucid as far as quantification. Picking more plants. We totally said it twice because it makes a big, big difference. Being able to cut carbs down or consider ketogenic diets, and then being able to have a plan for your protein. So let's talk about sodium. Sodium is one of the big ones I see misunderstood all the time. A lot of people understand low as being no. No is not better than low. You have to have the right amount. If you're drinking a lot of fluid and you don't have enough sodium, you can get cramps. You can just really feel sluggish and awful. We have a lot of patients who we encourage them to add a little bit of salt. If you're using a ketogenic diet, especially in those first initial phases, you have some big electrolyte shifts. Our patients have to add salt early on in the ketogenic phase. Otherwise, they end up having some problems. Most of the sodium in our diets really comes from processed food, and I pulled this from the CDC. 70% of the sodium that people eat in westernized countries comes from restaurant or processed foods. If you are cooking at home and using whole foods, adding some salt to enhance the flavor is almost not an issue at all for most people. So I always point this out because I have a lot of people, they're eating really bland food. They're not liking their food anymore because they totally pulled out salt and they're missing it, right? I mean, a soup without a little bit of salt can be real tough to really, really enjoy. Some people need to be very, very, very strict with it. We can tell it on their blood pressure and their labs, but the majority of people can liberalize just a little bit. Some things that we'll do to kind of modify if we're decreasing salt, people aren't used to having less salt, we'll use strong flavors like garlic, acidic flavors, lemon, lime, vinegar. I have a lot of patients who really like the kelp seasoning. It's a really good natural source of iodine and a lot of minerals, and I think is a really, really good addition into anybody's routine. Doesn't have hardly any sodium in it, but it feels like a salt shaker. Really nice thing to add in. Okay, so number 1 on your sodium, get the right amount. The right amount changes by the person, but if you have those symptoms, cramps, just kind of feeling lightheaded, maybe you're tired, maybe try adding a little bit of salt and see how you feel. It's real quick switch. Within a day or two, you can tell if that was the problem. It's not the only electrolyte that matters, but for some people, that's a big one they're cutting way back on. Another thing that is a standard recommendation, this is one that I'd say most physicians are on board with, is getting enough fluid, right? 80 to 100 ounces per day. And that would be clean, filtered water that is best for people to fill up on. Some people, we're not big fans of soda or juice. Some people like to do a little bit of sparkling water. Just know it's a little bit acidic, not a lot, but if that's all you drink, could be a problem. We really try and encourage our patients to eliminate soda, especially if it has artificial or regular sweeteners in it. Both sides can be problematic. But fluids is a really huge opportunity for people. If this is where you're starting, you can start by just getting that 80 to 100 ounces a day into your plan. It triggers some really interesting pathways with PKD in particular, and it dilutes the urine so you don't get so many of those microcrystals, which are some of the reasons the fluid is very helpful. Okay, the other thing is being able to manage, not obsess over oxalates. Now, oxalates come into the conversation with PKD going back to those microcrystals that I talked about. Oxalates are non-nutritive substance in plants. It's generally in a plant, they're using it as a protective defense against bugs or other animals eating them. It doesn't really make a difference to humans either way if we eat them, unless we have a disease process where we're not going to process them well. So with oxalates, there's a couple different databases you can use. We teach our patients kind of generally to aim for around 100 milligrams a day. You cannot track it, because even if you had a really smart tracker and you counted all your oxalates, the truth is it would be very inaccurate because oxalates even change based on where food is grown. So strawberries grown in California versus in Florida would have different oxalate contents. So we really teach our patients to understand a broad perspective on oxalates, meaning they're going to manage it, not obsess it. So manage means we cut out some of the highest foods. So for example, almonds, for I think it's 12 or 16 almonds, just a little handful, it's about 127 milligrams of oxalates. That's a lot if you're aiming for around 100 a day. Spinach is around 800. So it's like so many oxalates, even more than that. I can't remember what beets are, but they're also quite high. So these are just a few foods that are really high. Even if you're just eating almonds and spinach, those are easy ones to swap out, right? Have pecans instead of almonds. Choose a different type of lettuce. Choose arugula or kale or chard or just green leaf instead of spinach, and you'll way reduce the amount of oxalates that you are consuming. A lot of people, New Year, New You, they do spinach smoothies, and just definitely a no-go if you have polycystic kidney disease. The other part of management, so one part of management is decrease how much you eat, but that's not the only thing that matters. Less, good. You can learn a few heavy hitters. We do a whole module in our class. We spend a whole week with our patients really understanding the different foods with oxalates so they can make smart choices. The other thing, though, is that you want to be able, if you do eat oxalates, to be able to help grab some of it or bind some of it up in the gut so it doesn't get into the bloodstream and to the kidneys. The way that you can bind oxalates is with calcium. So you can use things like yogurt, any of the dairy products. Some people actually take a calcium citrate supplement with some of the higher oxalate foods that they eat, maybe a little bit of cheese, but we really encourage our patients to use some sort of a calcium source with their meals if they know they're going to get a lot of oxalates. Another one of the benefits of Keto Citra is that it has some of that calcium base, so it can help with that binding. So those are two things that's really huge. And then the third thing is that making sure you're well hydrated so your urine is more dilute, right? That's a huge part of it. The third part of management here, so you can bind it in the gut so it doesn't get in the bloodstream. But then when it gets into the bloodstream, down into the kidney tubules where everything's going to get filtered out, if you have really good alkaline urine, you're less likely to have those crystals form. And that's the other part of Keto Citra, is it has this citrate component to help so that you're not going to form those, your urine's going to stay a little bit more alkaline. And if your urine is more dilute. So if you're eating a very alkaline diet, your urine's going to be more alkaline. An alkaline diet is a lot of plants, which is what we utilize. And you can use other tools like Kale Citra, calcium citrate, a couple other supplements to help with that management of the oxalates. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about sodium, getting enough fluid, managing oxalates, and eating more plants is next. Plants and the kidneys across the board have shown positive outcomes for patients. And this is CKD, PKD, all over the place. With PKD, really getting the right plants, you're not eating spinach with a lot of oxalates makes a big difference, but they're full of really important nutrients that nurture not just, your body as a whole, but you get important nutrients and fiber for your gut. Remember, your gut plays into your kidney health. You get important nutrients that for your thyroid, you get important nutrients for your whole body, all the different pathways that need to happen. You get a lot from having enough plants in your diet. Doesn't mean that's the only thing you have to eat, and it doesn't mean you have to eliminate meat, but definitely getting enough plants in the diet is a huge, huge thing to be able to focus on. Our ketogenic approach is not typical ketogenic approach because we use a lot of plants. It's a little bit of a higher carb approach, although you get in ketosis, but we really focus on how can we get as many plants as possible into your diet and keep you in ketosis. With all that good fiber, a lot of them have a little bit of carb with them. Couple plants we use frequently. Cauliflower, we love using this. It's low carb, works with a lot of different, has a lot of different utilities, including doing something like cauliflower rice. Cucumbers we use, kale, some of the other greens. And I know you don't have to just eat kale, but people have strong feelings about it, but it is something we use. Onions, all the different lettuces, the zucchini squash, the crookneck squash are some things that you can use. Peppers and broccoli and arugula, all amazing, amazing foods as far as plants to include in your diet. If you were to get, 2 to 3 cups of vegetables every single day in your diet, would really, really improve the alkalinity of what you're doing. Even if you're still eating a lot of carbs, just getting those 2 to 3 cups of really good, colorful vegetables can be so, so important. And I know that sounds really cliche for dietitians to eat more vegetables, but I could line up study after study after study after study after study that showed there was benefits for the kidneys as a whole. And when you pull that back into PKD and look at it from the lens of using kind of a low carb approach, tons of benefits. And if you look at just alkalinity with microcrystals and all these uric acid levels, it makes a ton of sense to include more plants. Okay, carbohydrates. This is a big confusing area in polycystic kidney disease. If you're new to this conversation, the background is Dr. Wyme's research came out, talked about, low carb diets, ketogenic diets being helpful for PKD. And right away, a lot of people are like, hey, I don't have anything to lose. I might as well try it. Have started using low carb diets. I think there's a lot of relevance. It makes sense clinically. The first clinical trial on humans, because the research right now is just in animals. Some of the first clinical trials are just starting to come out. A really tiny trial that showed some pretty positive, I would say optimistic outcomes at a University of Cologne was just published in November. And our program, Renew, the clinical trial started December 18th. So it's like just brand new, and that's at Jutendo University, where we are going to be studying our approach and seeing how it works for PKD, this low carb kind of plant forward approach. So human studies are coming. There are some amazing people out there that are working on low carb approaches for PKD and seeing if the animal results translate to humans. For us, and for a lot of patients, if you can cut the carbs back safely and there's a possibility of it helping with PKD, why not? That's really one of the big questions when we decided to work on developing this approach. Is like, if there's no harm and there might be a benefit, why wouldn't you move in that direction? We do recommend our patients move, if they're not going to go to ketosis, to at least a lower carb approach, these are some foods we use, right? We use a lot of berries. Berries are a lower carb fruit. We love to use coconut because it's got a lot of good healthy fat. It's rich in a lot of good healthy fat, not a lot of carbohydrates. So it works really well in tons of recipes. We use some flax. I know there's some controversy about estrogen and flax and if you should use it. I haven't found that the research on the estrogen and flax is very solid. So we do use some flax. So couple things you can do. The other thing is that when people are looking at reducing carbs, being able to get some of that beta hydroxybutyrate to hopefully, shrink or stabilize cyst growth, is that they may use fasting or they may use keto, right? Keto, the diet's about 70 to 75% fat. It's not a high protein diet. It's a high fat diet, moderate to low protein, if you work with us. I really think the amount of protein that you would eat is going to depend on your stage of kidney disease. That's really how we kind of gauge it. And people that have more function, they have a lot more flexibility, which of course makes a ketogenic diet easier. If you eat too much protein, even though it doesn't have carbs, it can still knock you out of ketosis. So again, a ketogenic diet is a very high fat diet. I really think that working with a professional coming into the program Renew, which we'll talk about, is really, really powerful in learning ketosis and learning how it works for your body and how you might have to tweak it in different ways to make it work for you. I think that that's really, really an awesome thing for people. I think really every human should experience and learn the skill of ketosis because it has a lot of health benefits. Not that you have to be in ketosis 24/7, but if you learn this skill of following a ketogenic diet, how your body feels in ketosis, what are the outcomes you get, it really can hold a lot of power. Some people do not tolerate fat, a lot of fat for whatever reason, and in that case, it may not work for you, right? There are cases where ketogenic diet's not going to work for someone. That's something that a professional dietitians on our team, we try and assess prior to someone starting approach as if it's going to work for them. Fasting is a real easy, an easy lifestyle change that a lot of people like making. You start with 12 hours, maybe 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And fasting is also, time restricted feeding. They get used quite interchangeably. Maybe you start by saying, I'm not going to eat for 12 hours a day, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. Maybe you're going to work and stretch that out. So it's 16 to 18 hours. So now it's 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. the next day, and then 10 a.m. and 11. A lot of people have been fasting for a while. Their first meal of the day is actually their lunch, not breakfast. The only thing that I caution people that I see happening in the PKD space is I start seeing where people go on these really, really, really long fasts, multiple days. And I'm real cautious about those being used regularly because those really just you need nutrients in your body. They could be really damaging for some people, especially if their body's already under some level of stress. Okay, so what does a ketogenic diet look like? If you're going to use that for PKD, I think it's a great approach. What is it going to look like? Again, it's 70-75% fat, 10 to 15% is protein, and we use proteins like eggs and fish, a little bit of chicken. We like to use different nuts and seeds. Some soy products like tofu or some things we use. And then looking at carbohydrates, about 10 to 15%. And again, carbohydrates, which carbohydrates might you have? You might be using onions or lettuce or cucumbers or berries. There's a whole bunch of different things that you might be using for carbohydrates. So what do you do with protein? This is probably the most controversial topic that I've seen in this space for PKD outside of keto, not keto, low carb, is what you do for protein. Should you be vegan? Can you have meat? Can you eat eggs? What about, can you have dairy? Are any of these foods safe? What's the right way? Here is the truth. It is different for every single person. We tend to err on a heavy side of caution. On our side, we focus on fish and we use eggs and we use a little bit of chicken and some cheese. So we're using all those in a ketogenic approach. We've had a couple people that they don't eat any meat. They haven't eaten meat in years. So they're already using a vegetarian diet. And then we move it to ketosis. Really easy, works great for them. Some people that have a lot more kidney function, they're going to include some red meats or some other, meat foods, and they do okay with that too. So it's really dependent on the person on what you're going to do. If you're wanting to try and see how a more plant-forward approach would work, you're not ready to go into ketosis, you can start by being vegetarian. You could try a totally plant-based diet as well. Just be really cognizant of the minerals that you eat. So I don't think there's a one size fit all. I don't think an all meat diet is good. I don't think that an all plant diet is good. And it may be good for some people, but I just think that there's kind of the middle ground that works for more people. And again, this is something we work on with our patients. I have some patients who've come in, they're eating a lot of protein on this great ketogenic diet, and we shift it down a little bit, add some more plants in, and they actually feel a lot better than when they were eating so much meat. Other patients, they come in and they're not eating any meat. They've only been plant-based for forever and ever and ever. And we add just a little bit of egg or meat in, and they actually feel better that way too. So it's, different strokes for different folks. Okay, a couple of foods that we love. Want to make sure you have some practical things to think about. There's a lot of variety in how we teach our patients to eat. We really try and work with patients from where they're at. So if your breakfast every day is oatmeal and you've been eating oatmeal for 20 years, and now you're moving to a ketogenic diet, what is your breakfast going to be? It's not going to just switch to eggs. I mean, it could, but maybe you don't like them. I personally don't really like eggs in the morning. They don't make me feel good. So we might work on a keto porridge for you that can be a replacement for the oatmeal. That's really how we like to work. But a couple of foods you can see, a lot of these you've seen in the other pictures, eggs and fish and pumpkin seeds. We use these a lot because they're very mineral dense. Berries, tangerines, radishes, limes and lemons, olives, avocados, coconut, all just amazing, amazing nutrient dense foods that we can use. So, okay, that's kind of the background. I want to pull it into some questions and tie this up pretty quick because I want to make sure we have at least 15 minutes or so. Oh, we're getting short on time to answer questions. So, for yourself, putting this together, what are you going to do? Number one is define what your goal is. Like, what is your most important goal? And when I say that, I don't mean not end up on dialysis. Some people say, my goal is not end up on dialysis. That is a good goal. That is possible. But what is your sub goal? Like, where are you wanting to start at for that goal? You're like, I really want to try cutting back my carbs. I really eat quite a bit of salt. Maybe I want to try modifying that a little bit. I want to, like where do you want to start and see an impact? Look at your labs, right? Do you know what your labs are? What stage of kidney disease are you at? Because that's going to really determine the approach you use. Lifestyle considerations. If you're traveling, all the time, every single week for work or for whatever reasons, is it a good time to start a aggressive dietary intervention? You can do ketogenic approach. You can do a lot of these things when traveling. We have a lot of people in Renew that are busy and they are traveling and they come in and they still are able to really get some great traction. What is your lifestyle at? Can you have maybe you're home all the time and so cooking is going to be real easy for you. Whatever it is that really plays into your plan. The worst diet is the one you can't do or you can't follow because it's totally ineffective. How much time do you have to commit? Do you have a space of time where you can really work on changing your diet? Any nutrition change, even if it's a little one, it's going to take a little bit of learning curve, a little bit of tweaking to be able to have it stick and be sustainable. And then do you need some help, right? Is it going to be easier for you to be able to work through all these questions and put all the pieces together if you have a professional help you out Do you have a family member that can help you out? Those are big questions we have people ask. Couple options that you can do, right? If you need someone to help you as you kind of walk through some nutrition changes, Renew is an amazing program to work through. This is our science-backed ketogenic program for PKD. It takes 12 weeks as a participant. Within a week or two, you're in ketosis, and then we monitor and help, assess and help you assess if this is going to be the right approach for you. But our next cohort starts January 10th, and then after that will be in April, and we are just finishing off applications this week. So if you're interested in coming into Renew, you definitely want to get over to the website and apply, and so you can get in before it starts on January 10th. The other thing is maybe you want to work with someone one-on-one. You don't like a group setting. You want to tweak what you're already doing. You want to see, like, maybe you've already been doing ketosis. Is it right? Are you missing something? What can you do for your gut? Because you just heard tonight that that can be really helpful. Maybe you want to do one-on-one with one of our experts at KNI. In that case, grab a discovery call, and that helps you kind of ask a few questions for free. And then you go into what's called a strategy call, where we take an hour with you and really build out a strategy, kind of pick through what you're already doing, and give you some ideas. And then you can go into what's called our Knowledge Hub also. Another option, we'll send out a link after this, and that's really a DIY area. It has meal plans, and it has recipes, and we do live classes like this every month, and lots of things that you can do to kind of support yourself if you're just needing tools, not necessarily a professional by your side. So Renew, we've talked a little bit about. That's a program where we are partnered with Santa Barbara Nutrients. We use KetoCitra in that program along with our ketogenic approach. And it goes through really these phases. I told you 12 weeks, right? Orientation, getting ketosis, learn to be fat adapted, where your body's used to using ketones. We have it 12 weeks specifically because we want to make sure people are fat adapted. And then helping our patients get a long-term plan. Not everyone stays in ketosis for forever. But the goal at the end is not that you're in ketosis for forever. It's that you know what you're going to do forever, and you've tried ketosis and know if that works for you or not. And we always measure with labs on either end of it to know if what's working. So you can learn more about Renew at renew.org. You can go to Santa Barbara Nutrients as well. They have some great information there. And we do have a study on our beta test of the program and what the outcome was for that first group of folks with PKD that went through the program. Okay, I'm going to skip through this so we can get to some questions, because these other things I went through real briefly just a second ago. And we have a lot of questions in here. The one thing I will say, though, before I turn over to questions, and maybe I'll keep this up while I share questions, is if you, and I'm sorry, this is up. If you need to get in touch with us, you can go to kidneynutritioninstitute.org or renew.org, right? Either one of those is really helpful place for you to get in touch with us. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Pinterest. You can call us. We have real people that answer the phone, and or you can send us an email as well. But we'd love to help you. We really believe that nutrition is such a huge part, such a huge therapy for people to be able to stabilize or improve their PKD. Okay, let's get into some questions that you guys have. About 10 minutes. See how many we can get through tonight. And I really appreciate everyone coming tonight. It really, really makes a big difference. And I'm just glad to have you here. Okay, a couple questions. I'm going to open the Q&A and then I'll go over to the chat. So Margot said to ask, what do you think about 24-hour fasts? And 24-hour fasts, I think they can be fine for people. Kind of going back to my slide on this, I think fasting is amazing. And I think it has tons and tons of benefits. What I worry about, what I see sometimes, is that people start using food because they feel like everything is out of control. So they want to control their food. They they use excessive amounts of fasting where you're not getting nutrients, right? Excessive amounts of fasting because it feels like control. But I think you can do longer than 24-hour fasts. I've had some patients that do that. Will the recording be available? Yes, it will after this. Regarding BHB and ketones, what do you think of adding exogenous ketones and if it's beneficial? What are the best types, plus when you take them? So one of the questions that is still out there on the market, or just one of the questions, period, in my mind and many people's mind, what we see with exogenous ketones in the animal models is that it works as good as a ketogenic diet. We hope that that is going to be the case for humans, but we don't know yet. Was one study, it just barely came out, it was published maybe like a month ago, out of, where is that? Maybe the Netherlands? I'm not sure, I'll have to go look it up, where they used exogenous ketones with BHB and had seen some preliminary, very positive outcomes. When we don't know 100% if it's going to work for humans, and we also don't know the right dose. All of that being said, there's a lot on the market that's out there for exogenous ketones. What you need to watch for is what they're comboing it with the salts. The Keto Citra, which has exogenous ketones, it doesn't have any sodium in it. It is a really good formula, and it is a combo formula. So it's giving you the exogenous ketones, but also the citrate and the minerals, which helps with those microcrystals. That is generally what we use for our patients, because I think it has just, it's a really smart, very carefully done formula. And Center Barbara Nutrients was really careful where they sourced their ingredients. So it's a good quality product. What about RO water? Yes, RO water is a great tool. That's what I drink. I think it's good to use RO water, especially better than just tap water. Tap water in different areas can actually have a lot of sodium in it. And then there's, of course, some questions about what else is in the water, different things that don't filter out in our modern water system. I think RO water is a really, really good idea. How much is the Renew program now? The Renew program right now is priced at around $1,800. It includes a 90-day supply of the Keto Citra with the program, and that's where it's priced at right now. And people use their flex spending, their health savings account. It's not covered by regular insurance unless you have some sort of out-of-network benefit for dietitian visits. You might be able to submit those. We can definitely give you a super bill because it is considered medical nutrition therapy. So it can be coded and for some people covered outside of their insurance. Any suggestions on where I can find a ketone monitor in Nova Scotia, Canada? I've tried many different pharmacies. This is a great question that I honestly would have to ask our Canadian dietitian. I don't know off the top of my head. You could shoot us an email, and I'm sure that Jennifer can send you an answer. I have some patients that they've had a family member in the States or a relative or a friend grab them one and then ship it to them. But there might be another one. I just can't remember what it is off the top of my head. What is the quantity in grams of meat and eggs that I can eat in a day? It depends on the person. There is not a one size fit all for how much you can eat. That's one of the things that we do with our participants in the Renew program, or if you work with us privately one-on-one, is they're wanting to give you the framework, right? What is your framework to work in? How much fat do you need to aim for? How much, how many carbs, how many protein, and then not just taking those gram amounts, right? 50 grams of net carbs per day, but then moving that down to actual food. Like, what does it actually mean for what you're going to eat, not just, some arbitrary numbers. Okay. Hi, we have two 10-year-old daughters with PKD. Could you please say a few words about keto diets for kids? Suitability, sustainability. Thank you. Could you please let us know if you provide consultations if you take insurance? Is Keto Citra recommended for kids? This is a great question that we don't have a great answer for, unfortunately. I think that time is going to tell. You can use ketogenic diets for kids and they can grow just fine. The mentors that taught us ketogenic diets, I have been doing it for 20, 30 years as professionals, because we were coming from being renal dietitians and then learning this metabolic health therapy. They work with a lot of kids with epilepsy and other conditions that must have ketogenic diets. And I think it could work. If it was my kid right now, because some of the research is pretty preliminary, I would start with eliminating oxalates and just reducing simple sugars, which is real hard in our environment, but reducing them in my home, right? Those are two simple steps that you can take. We did have one girl that went and did a ketogenic approach. Their family really, really wanted to try it. She had a pretty low GFR, so they felt like they didn't have anything to lose. And I think she was 14, and we don't have a pediatric dietitian right now, but she actually had some pretty incredible outcomes and has sustained her kidney function. She'll be able to graduate high school, never had to get dialysis, which was really exciting for their family. Okay. I'm hoping this continues to advance over time, but right now we just don't have a lot of information on kids. You could use keto citrate for kids. I don't know the exact amount, but you definitely could use it. Exogenous ketones and then the citrate and the minerals in there are fine. You'd use definitely a less of an amount than for adults. But yeah, you could use it safely. Would you recommend alkaline water? I think you could do alkaline water. It's not going to hurt you. If price and cost is not an issue, then yeah, you could definitely include it. I would not recommend it across the board for everyone, primarily because I think there's other ways that you can raise alkalinity in your diet without the added cost of a specialty water. So that's my thoughts on it, but you could. Dina says she's excited to start the program and we're excited to have you. So it's going to be awesome to have you with us. What's the difference between CKD and PKD as a whole, or a good diet to follow? So the main difference between CKD and PKD is the driver of what's declined. And remember, CKD is a kind of a very broad term for all kidney diseases. And PKD is a subset of CKD, but the terms are kind of thrown around in different ways. So, I mean, PKD is very, very unique in the world of kidney disease because it is genetic, and the decline is a lot driven by the cyst growth and the fibrosis and the scarring of the tissue that happens as cysts grow. And so that's different from somebody who has diabetes and the high blood sugars, and inflammation is kind of causing that fibrosis and that destruction of the kidney tissue. So it's just what is impacting the kidney tissue. Can you do renal if you are taking tolvaptan? Absolutely. We have lots and lots and lots of people that take tolvaptan that work with us and do ketogenic diets. So that's not any reason to not do it for sure. And last thing, can you use Lipitor while on ketosis? This is a great question, Aura. With all of the medications, we do not modify them when people come in. We use the labs to help influence any of those decisions, and it is up to the physician to decide. So if you are on any sort of a statin, then we would have that conversation. So, okay, we are at the top of the hour. I'm going to just take one more question that I saw popped in, and then I'm going to close out for the evening. But I really thank everyone again for coming here. The last question that I said that I saw pop in here, two right at the end. Would you take kids as patients? Right now, we are not taking any kids as patients. We did have a pediatric dietitian, but right now we don't have anyone. So we're not really comfortable with treating kids. And some say that even though humans can function and be fueled in ketosis, it's actually stressful on the body. It's a great, a really, really good question. Stressful on the body is a pretty broad term also that is thrown around. Stressful comparative to what is usually what I would say. There's a lot of people I know that have been in ketosis for a long time in the ketogenic community, and they do fine. Again, like every therapy fits in a different way. Some people are going to use ketosis temporarily. Some people use ketosis for forever. We're all made a little bit different. I was in a really stressful time in my life and was using a ketogenic diet. I did not feel good using a ketogenic diet when I was already under a lot of stress. There is stress because you are kind of, for lack of a better word, you're flipping your body into what it would use in a starvation mode. But once your body is adapted and it's used to using ketones, it's not so stressful, right? So I think it's just a very individual decision. Some people feel amazing on ketosis and they will stay in ketosis for forever because that's how they feel best. They might go in and out a little bit, but otherwise they stay there. So, okay, we're past time. Really appreciate any of you guys coming. Again, if you're interested in coming into our group program Renew, make sure and apply tonight because we are closing out applications. We actually are pretty close to capacity in the program. And so for this January cohort. So if you want to come in, make sure and apply. We go through the applications. And for that January 10th. Otherwise, all applications you just ship to the April cohort if you're wanting to come in. Or grab a discovery call, come work with us one-on-one. We'd love to guide you through this. Nutrition is really powerful, and I hope all of you have felt that there is hope and there's something you can do. You can do something and you can take control into your own hands. Just because you have PKD doesn't mean you have to end up on dialysis. That's not something that we believe at all. Anyways, thanks everyone. I hope you have a good night. Bye-bye.